Mitch, thank you so much for joining me. Really appreciate you coming on.
Good to see you again, Dave. Good to see you. It's been a while, hasn't it?
Yeah. So since we last spoke, quite a lot has happened. You kind of lit Twitter the Twitterati on fire. Could you talk a little bit about what happened?
Um, you mean that little stroke that I had? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, yeah.
um, yeah. Certainly unexpected. And certainly the fodder for every kind of propaganda, misinformation, misunderstanding. And everybody used my stroke to support their agenda. The vegan community went friggin' nuts. They just lost their minds. Carnivore causes stroke. See? Like a vegan never had a stroke. Right? And that wasn't any real news to me. I had kind of a mild to moderate stroke, but it was still completely disabling. And that was almost 8 months ago. God, where did this year go? It was on February the 28th. Just 2 weeks after I actually was on the panel at Curry and Kiltz's big meetup in Florida, and I was one of the speakers and everything. So 2 weeks later, I find myself being ambulanced to the hospital, my entire right side of my body completely paralyzed, scared out of my mind. I can't get sick, I thought, but and the first thing they do in the hospital is, of course, take 1 million tests, blood tests and everything else. My LDL in the hospital came back at 350 and total cholesterol almost 500, which for somebody in my health and my weight puts me, and my HDL is high, my triglycerides are low, and even though I'm almost 79 years old, I'm in pretty good shape, been working out, fairly muscular for a skinny old man, and it puts me in the lean mass hyperresponder category, where 350 LDL not only isn't all that alarming, but it's not even anywhere near the higher end of what some of those guys have. They did a bunch of tests. They did CAT scans of my brain. They did all kinds of stuff. And down to everyone in the hospital. I don't just mean the doctors. I mean the dietitians, the janitor who was mopping the floor. Everybody was firmly convinced that it was my high cholesterol that caused the stroke, clogged my arteries. And when they found out I was a carnivore, because that's what they think. And they come at you right away. They're wanting to put me on massive doses of statins. Now, I know about statins, and they would have done more harm than good. They wanted, my blood pressure's been perfectly normal, about 115 over 65, 68 for years. Ever since I started carnivore, I was able to get off all my blood pressure meds and everything. But when you have a stroke and you're scared out of your mind, and your blood pressure is going to be 180 over something. Well, that was the cause of my stroke too, according to them. So they want to put me on massive amounts of beta blockers and other blood pressure medicine. And I started fighting with them right there. I was labeled within 5 minutes as an uncooperative patient, because everything they told me would have done me more harm than good. There was no medical reason. There was a propaganda reason for that. And I can't tell anybody else what to do because I'm not a doctor. And even if I was a doctor, I can't give YouTube people advice. They're not my patients. But I can advocate for myself. That's the one thing that nobody can sue me for refusing to. I refused the statins. I gave in to a basically minimal dose because of one doctor who was a real statin salesman. And this guy, come to find out, was such a statin advocate that he is actually lobbying the government, part of an organization, lobbying the government to put statins in our drinking water. Because he's convinced that infants ought to have statins in their baby formula. This guy is a kook of the highest order. And I agreed to take a low-dose baby aspirin because I know a little bit about medicine, more than some of the doctors, it appears. And I know that I had a clot. That's what a stroke is. Clot in the brain, and some of the brain dies from lack of oxygen. And I know it was on my left side because I saw the MRIs and the CAT scans. And there it was, smack. The clot happened smack on the site. Can you see that scar here? A big scar. Clear on the site of where I had brain surgery 3 years ago. Because I had a fall. And the medical community screwed up. I was working out in the gym, overdid it, got dehydrated, my electrolytes were low. Then I, like an idiot, I went into the sauna and got myself overheated. Then I kind of staggered back to my locker because I was feeling very, very lightheaded. And I decided, well, I'm going to lay down on a bench next to my locker. So I did. And in fact, anybody who's worked out hard has found themselves overdoing it, and you just lay down for a few minutes. Well, the next thing I knew, I ended up in the emergency room. An hour and a half later, when I finally woke up, my son was there. Evidently, I had thought I was all right. I don't remember this, but stood up, passed out. On the way down, I hit the back of my head on my right side, on the corner of the bench. Really whacked it pretty good. And the way those kind of injuries work is they radiate to the opposite side of the brain, the shock. So if you hit your head real hard on the right side, any bleeds you have, any brain bleeds, you're going to be on the other side. So I had a brain bleed. They called it a subarachnoid hemorrhage. So far, this was all my fault. Don't blame anybody for this so far. How can you blame somebody when you're stupid and let yourself get to a point where you faint? But then the fun started. They say, well, you've got a subarachnoid hemorrhage, a brain bleed, and we're going to keep you overnight for observation. I said, fine. That's great. I could use a little rest. I'll just rest in your bed. I stayed the night. The next morning, nurse comes in with discharge papers. Mr. Weiss, we're sending you home. I said, really? Am I all right? Well, according to the doctor's notes, you're fine and the bleed is not bleeding. And I said to myself, how the hell do they know this? Without doing another CAT scan, CT scan. How could you possibly know whether I'm bleeding or not? Nobody has looked into my head. Nobody's come in this morning and checked me out for symptoms. The doctor just signed a discharge order. Get rid of this guy. Stick him in a room. So I said, well, don't I need another CT scan before you send me home to make sure I have stopped bleeding? Well, the doctor seems very confident that you're okay. We're going to send you. I said, okay. I was happy. Great. Must not have been that bad in the first place if they're going to send me home without really looking into it. So I went home. And I'm still a little shaky, but I figured, well, I just whacked my head. My head with a little concussion too. 2 weeks goes by. 3 weeks goes by. I start to get to the point where I'm losing my balance. losing my balance. About 4 weeks after that, I was standing up from a chair and fell into a coffee table, which hit me right on my rib cage under my arm, because I put my arm out to brace myself, and when I fell on the coffee table, I thought, broke some ribs. I was in amazing pain. It was late at night. I was by myself. I get in my car. I drive to the emergency room, right smack at the height of COVID, right in the middle of COVID. There was 10,000 people in the emergency room. I went up to the guy when I checked in, and I said, listen, I think the problem I'm having is related to a brain bleed I had about 4 or 5 weeks. Okay, sir, we'll get to you. We'll get to you. Just go sit down. I sat there for 5 hours in excruciating pain. Nobody paid any attention to me. I finally got looked at. They sent me for an X-ray. They didn't do a scan. They did an X-ray of here. I said, I think it might not be a bad idea to X-ray my head or to do a CT scan on my head. Well, evidently they couldn't convince the insurance company they should pay for that, because I just fell on the table. And I said, well, what about it? I was in your hospital and you turned me loose, and now I can't stand up when I've fallen over. Well, we're so busy. They never even got me into an exam room. They finally got around and examined me out in the hallway, and said, well, good news. So, yeah, nothing broken, no broken ribs. You're just going to be sore. And they gave me one big pill, which is a super, either NSAID or acetaminophen or ibuprofen or something like that. The prescription strength. I said, well, just take that for the pain. You'll be all right. So I asked them again about the head and the head injury, and they just weren't interested, didn't want to hear it, couldn't do anything about it. You'll be all right, sir. Trust us. And I went home. 2 weeks after that, I started to develop stroke symptoms. Now, I hadn't had a stroke, but I was starting to get the symptoms. The dizziness got worse. I started to have aphasia in 3, 4, 5 minute attacks. It would just come on, and I couldn't put words together. And then 3 or 4 minutes later, it got better. And this just kept getting worse and worse until I went into the store to buy something, and I'm in there talking to the clerk behind the counter, and I couldn't talk. I could not form a sentence. Scared the pants off me. I got my speech back. I got to my car, called my son. I couldn't talk to him, scared him. He came and got me, took me to I happened to be fortunate that he happened to be on the chairman. He was on the board of directors of a local hospital. He got me right in. They treated me like red carpet treatment. They had me in a CT scanner. And God's honest truth, 30 minutes later, I was in a helicopter being flown, medevaced to the big hospital closest to us that has the big neurology center. I had a subdural hematoma, almost an inch thick, a blood clot under my skull in my brain. It was pressing so hard on my brain that if it had gone another day, it probably would have killed me. And I say, well, the world would have been lucky because they wouldn't have had to put up with me like they do now. So I had brain surgery the next day. They cut the whole side of my skull out. That's why I've got this big scar. They removed the skull. They cleaned out this hematoma. God knows what they did in there, but I got to know that even if they did it perfectly, they still disturbed a tremendous amount of pathology in there. Physiology, blood vessels were probably damaged, all kinds of things. And coincidentally, what a coincidence, that's exactly where I had the stroke, at the site of that surgery. So I said to myself, if you're a logical thinker, that makes more sense than the carnivore diet causing my stroke, when the carnivore diet cured everything else that was wrong with me.
So, just as an aside, that means on the side of your head you've got like a question mark scar. Is it kind of the question mark
Oh
shape?
man, here, let's see if I can find it, and I will get it up there for you.
Wow.
What do you think?
Yeah. Um,
That's what it looked like when I got home from the hospital. They cut me from front to back, took the
wow.
flap of skin and pulled it down,
Mm.
and cut that the entire section of my side of my skull under that arc was cut out, put aside. And when they were done, they put a piece of bone back in there, and it healed. And most of the scar went away, but the bone, I still have a wavy side of my head is still wavy from the bone not healing perfectly flat. And that's where I had the stroke. So when I was in the hospital, I said to them, could it have been something about my surgery? Now, I've done a lot of research into it since then. And if you had to be a betting man, there's 1,000 times more odds that that's where the stroke happened, because of something that got cut or damaged or in that part. And then I talked to Sally Norton about it, about oxalate dumping, which I've been doing, and told her about my stroke and where it was. And she just almost went, well, duh, and described to me what happens to these surgical sites when you start dumping oxalates into the mix. So I'm pretty well sure of that. I was pretty certain it wasn't my diet, but every doctor, every medical professional told me I was going to be dead if I didn't lower my cholesterol. Now, interestingly enough, I think that my high cholesterol it accounts for the fact that I recovered so tremendously from this stroke so far. And at my advanced age, I'm still perfectly healthy. I have no diseases, no conditions, no ailments, no chronic diseases. Don't take any prescription drugs. This has sapped my energy, but I have, for somebody in my situation, it's taken me 7-8 months to relearn to walk. My balance is still off. Unfortunately, sometimes that never really returns like it was, because it's such a fine motor skill, the muscle movements of balancing, that even if, and I still have in my right arm, I still have problems getting them on the right keys when I'm typing, but I'm starting to play the piano again. I even actually the other day was able to write a check with my right hand. And of course, I'm right-handed too. So it has been life-altering, but fabulously fascinating and very educational, learning about what happens and how the body can recover. And the one thing I did learn about it, which is something I talk about a lot on my channel, is that all the recovery you're going to have from your stroke is in your brain. It's in your brain, in the connections in your brain. That's where the healing has to happen. When you're paralyzed on your right side, you really haven't done anything to your hand. You've only screwed up the connections to that area of your brain that controlled the muscles in your hand. So your brain has to rebuild itself, and that in itself is fabulous to think of that. Finding an undamaged little bit of area of the brain to reconnect to the nerves that go to the hand and reteach it what took you a lifetime to learn. And I'm doing great. I walk, for about the first 4 months, I relied on a walker. I now go all day, every day without a walker. I go out in the neighborhood, do a short walk but I'm still shaky. I have to be extremely careful. I wear the I've fallen and I can't get up button. I live alone. I'm not taking any chances. In the 8 months since my stroke, I've only had like one minor tumble where I tripped over something on the ground and kind of stumbled, but I really didn't hurt myself. It was not that bad. But I'm not giving up. And I figure that, at a year to 2 years, however much I recover is going to be more than adequate. If I stay just like I am now, I can still have a fabulous life, still have a great life. It might not be as active a life, but this happens to us. This happens to people, and you either cry about it and feel sorry for yourself, or you pick yourself up. And I found that talking about my experiences recovering from the stroke and making videos, I have a whole playlist on my channel called My Stroke Recovery, where you'll see me in different, from month to month to month to month, and you'll see just how much I've improved. I still feel like I'm slurring my speech, but people tell me that it's not noticeable, but to me it's noticeable. I don't know how much better that's going to get. I got to a point where the speech therapist said, "You're fine," but I know I'm not like I used to be, but good enough. Nobody has any trouble understanding me. I do it every morning, a live stream for an hour and a half. So it's not that I don't do enough practice and speech exercising. In fact, that's the most used muscle in my face, my mouth.
So when this happened, was there a moment that, with all the doctors pressuring you and whatever, and I know you were pushing back on the drugs that they were trying to give you, but was there just a moment that you had that you kind of felt, well, like maybe this was something to do with the way I've been eating, or that just never crossed your mind at all?
Well, you can't help it. I'm too smart and know too much about medicine, know too much about the effects of diet and how long it takes to really screw you up. I know that if it was diet that did any damage to me, it was 40 to 50 years of eating crap, not the last 2 or 3 years of eating healthy food, because I've seen the improvement from that. But you're not going to reverse this stuff. So yeah, it's possible that I have some calcium in my arteries, that I have a blockage or two, some artery. It would be folly for me to think that I could have followed, because I'm a carb addict of the highest order. And that's the other thing that we could talk about is carb addiction, because I discovered that was the problem 50 years ago, and I've been fighting my entire life to overcome it. I've been on 15 diets, up and down, 50 pounds this way, 50 pounds that way. And I know I'm not the only person on the planet that has followed this path through life and failed every time, because my addictions wouldn't leave me alone. I couldn't stay on the wagon. No matter how strong I was, or strong-willed I thought I was, or how much I thought I had self-control, I learned and finally admitted to myself what is reality. And the reality is that we're not in charge. And I wrote a book, and I'm not plugging my book because I don't want anybody to buy it, because they'll be wasting their money if they bought it from Amazon, because they'll never read it. And if they start reading it, they won't get it, because I wrote it at a 7th grade English level, but it's over everybody's head, theory-wise. And it's called Taming the Beast Within. That's my book. I wrote it 24 years ago. And the premise of the book, and something I'd already figured out back then, which had nothing to do with diet, is that we humans are all animals. We descend from the animals that came before us. Right away, I lose half the people. I lose all the religious people right there. I become the demon. Humans didn't come from animals. We're not related to the monkeys. We have nothing like them. God created us to be different, and I don't want to hear anything else. And they shut their minds and yell at you and label you a heretic. And that's one of the biggest problems I've had, trying to help people understand why they can't not eat that slice of birthday cake. No matter how hard they say, I don't want to eat the birthday cake, there are real reasons, real evolutionary lessons learned through eons by our subconscious mind, our animal mind. And our conscious mind hasn't matured enough yet to have anything but the ability to make a suggestion to the subconscious to get it to really act, because the subconscious is a machine. Its job is to run its programming and keep the machine of the body alive. It monitors everything, controls everything, regulates everything thousands of times a second. It's not thinking. And it thinks, and this is the theory, and I could talk on any one of these subjects for days. The subconscious mind, guys, has developed separate programming, different programming for different types of foods. For the real foods that we evolved eating as humans, over the past few million years, nobody's addicted to those foods. Nobody joneses for those foods. When's the last time you woke up at 3 a.m. and said, if I don't have a ribeye steak in 5 minutes, I don't know what I'm going to do? Got in your car, drove to the meat market, bought a ribeye steak, came home, cooked it, and wolfed it down. And then after you wolfed it down, you weren't satisfied, right? You wouldn't imagine eating like 32 ounces of ribeye and saying, oh man, I need more ribeye now. I just haven't had enough. That's the response we have to carbohydrates, but we don't have it to protein and fat. And the reason we have it to carbohydrates is because we only turn to the carbohydrates in our evolution as a survival food. The rules are different for survival food. When you find it, we need to compel the animal to gather or eat every last bit of it because it's scarce, rare, and their life depends on it. Then we develop different pathways in our physiology to be able to use this alternative fuel of sugar. And then we develop different storage mechanisms. For our real fuel, we deposit that as body fat. And the average human being on the planet today has got 6 months worth of fuel they carry around with them all the time as body fat. You can't starve to death when you weigh 300 pounds. I'm sorry. But what happened was we became co-opted by corrupt people for profit, and how easily we get addicted to this survival food because it's something that meant life and death to our ancestors, and that's the way our programming works. So when we eat nothing but survival food, like most people do, we get used to it. Now, it's not an accurate way to describe it, but we label ourselves sugar burners and fat burners. That's oversimplified. But we're hybrids. We have different pathways, at least the pathways at the first stages of cellular respiration, where ATP and the energy is created. They have glycolysis, lipolysis. We have the Krebs cycle. We have the Randall cycle. We have the electron transport chain or oxidative phosphorylation. See, old Mitch knows his stuff. But the first part of that can come from two different pathways. The one that came from the sugars and one that came from the fats. And then you end up with acetyl-CoA or NADH or whatever, the kind of intermittent things, and they go on to create adenosine triphosphate, which is ATP. And that's what makes the little molecular motors that move things in our body, makes them work and performs the actual work. We get so used to only using the pathways because we've always got so much sugar in us, because we're all eating carbohydrates, because we're all addicted to them, because they taste sweet and they're engineered by the food companies, just like the tobacco companies used to engineer cigarettes to make them more and more addictive. Our fat-burning pathways have to wake up when we stop eating the sugar, which is what a lot of people feel when they first go on carnivore. Their cells are exploring territories they haven't explored for 30 years. And this is what happens when you're burning primarily sugar. Your body's got plenty of energy stored. You're not going to starve to death. Your body just forgot how to use it. And insulin is responsible for that. You become insulin resistant. There's so many things. Insulin, your blood sugar is always so high, insulin turns off. You always have so much insulin, it turns off the fat cells' ability to release any of this energy they got. It's like having a tank full of gas in your car, but somebody came along and put a valve on it and put a lock on it, and you could be sitting there in the middle of the desert dying with enough gas to get you for 500 miles, but you can't turn the valve, you can't open the valve. Sugar, on the other hand, and this is so obvious, and I've never heard this talked about. How many people do you hear in their YouTube videos describe why you can't not eat that donut? Why you're compelled to eat the donut? You store 1 day's worth of sugar. You know that. The kids in first grade chemistry learn that you have 1 day's worth of sugar stored as glycogen in your muscles and your liver. And this is the reason why long distance runners just hit the wall at a certain point, run out of gas and collapse. Well, what about all the fat? Well, their bodies aren't in a proper chemical state or hormonal state to open the valves to that fat, so they drop like a rock. And we're finding that to be true today with this new breed of carnivore athletes that say, hell, I ran 5 marathons, 1 a day for 5 days, fasted. The other marathoners are carb loading before. They got rows of protein bars and carbohydrate bars and energy bars strapped to them so that they can keep replenishing their sugar. What happens in your subconscious mind that's trying to regulate the chemistry of all this? Well, it's very simple. Subconscious mind constantly thinks that if you don't get more sugar, you're going to be dead tomorrow. Does that logic make sense?
Yeah.
That doesn't escape you. That's not anything outlandish. If your subconscious mind is monitoring all the gauges, it can't get to the fat. It's trying to control everything. It's not consciously thinking about it, but it's reading the numbers, and it sees the sugar level going down, and it gets range anxiety, like you do when you drive in your car and you see the gas tank almost near empty and you got 100 miles to go to the gas station. Well, it gets range anxiety. We're going to be dead tomorrow. So the subconscious mind compels an animal to act through either pain or pleasure, reward or response, or an emotion of some sort. It's what got the cavemen off the rock, grabbed their spear, and went out and chased big, hairy mammals with a very high chance that they would get killed. But their conscious mind at that point got shut off. We can't have this person considering, maybe I shouldn't go hunting today. That's sure death. We need this guy to, be in a fight or flight mode, to have his rational thinking just turned off for a little while so we can get down to the animal stuff of compelling him to go out and find the food we need. Well, that's what mechanism it uses on us. Our subconscious mind uses that on us and compels us to find sugar. And that's the definition of a craving. And you get a feeling. You don't know why. Why is it sometimes you crave things and sometimes you don't? Well, that's when the subconscious said, time to refill. That's why people who are living on sugar can't go more than 2 hours without a fix. That's why their blood sugar is yo-yoing all the time. Their hormones never settle down, and they get all these chronic diseases like diabetes and things. And it all boils down to the fact that we're not meant to live on sugar. We're meant to use sugar as an emergency fuel. And it boils down to the fact that the programming that's running all this fabulous chemistry in our subconscious mind is the same programming that was in the cavemen, with very few modifications. And all that being said, Dave, describing or figuring out over years, even writing chapters, 2 chapters about that mechanism in my book that I wrote 25 years ago. I've always known why I couldn't avoid the sweet things and the sugar, why I had to have them. The cravings are so strong I couldn't fight them. Now, that isn't the same in all people. And it's easy to explain. All this stuff has obvious and simple answers. I've just created a new, not that anybody hasn't thought of it in these terms, and not that I'm trying to trademark the term, but a new thrust for my channel. I want to be effective at trying to get people to understand, because the way I finally conquered the carb addictions, somebody who was fabulously addicted, to now, I never even think about this stuff. I can go years. I went years without a gram of carbohydrates. I could go to parties and watch people eat birthday cake. When I was in the hospital for the stroke, unfortunately, they fed me so much sugar, I got re-addicted. And it took me a couple months to get unaddicted again. But that's our medical care system. They want to kill you and keep you sick, even though they don't even know that's what they're doing. They think they're doing good because they're ignorant. But that's a whole nother story. But I came up with this thing that I called the carb addiction spectrum. You ever heard it? Ever heard that term before? And you ever heard anybody talking about the carb addiction spectrum? I hadn't either.
Never.
I hadn't either. And it just makes so much logical sense. There's also an alcohol addiction spectrum. There's a spectrum for everything, because not everybody's the same. And that spectrum can be divided into, say, a scale of 100. They have it for autism. And somebody who's at the top of the autism spectrum and somebody who's at the bottom don't need the same treatment. In fact, the treatment that might help one would probably hurt the other. But we lump everybody into the same boat. All humans are alike. We're all human. So therefore, everybody should eat this and nobody should eat that. And then, of course, the people who are opponents, usually because they want to sell us their crap, always come up with things like the blue zones or some other kind of propaganda to prove that the healthiest people in the world don't eat meat. Well, most of that is false. Like most of the studies that they throw our way, the data is fraud. And then if the data shows what they don't want it to show, they manipulate the statistics to make it sound like they got their way. And that's our entire medical community right now is built on all those phony studies. So I put no credence in any study, especially the ones paid for by the food and drug companies, because duh. But I'm coming up with this thing, and I'm doing a lot of my own creation on this addiction spectrum and trying. I've already got a video on my channel that says, take this carb addiction test to see if you're a carb addict. And it's pretty well thought out. But there's a few of them out there. You know, little questions like, when you go to a restaurant and sit down and they put a basket of bread on the table in front of you, can you not eat it? Or will you eat the entire basket if the food hasn't come and ask them for more bread? Well, that shows you out there. How about alcoholics? There are so many people, because I don't think alcoholism is nearly as addictive as carbohydrates. I mean, the evidence is there.
I would agree. As someone who tried to give both up at the same time, I think alcohol was easier to give up.
Well, I don't have that experience. That's great. I've never even liked alcohol. I am on an alcohol addiction spectrum. I'm a 0. But on a carb addiction spectrum, I'm 100. And it all has to do with the evolutionary path and what our ancestors had to do to stay alive. So somebody who's not a real carb addict is probably not a descendant of lines of humans that lived far up north in icy, frigid climates and had to hunt meat and scrounge the rest of the time for carbs, because for them, they had to be super compelled to find the carbohydrates, where if you grew up in a tropical climate with trees all over the place and fruit and all that stuff, you're likely not to be a carbohydrate addict. And you can get addicted, but not to the level like I am. That almost doesn't work anymore, looking at your ancestry, because as soon as we invented boats and airplanes and took people out of their native parts of the world where they had evolved in that environment, with that food supply and that climate up until that time, and they married, an Eskimo married a Hawaiian, their poor kid is screwed. He can't tell anymore. He can't tell based on his ancestry what he's supposed to eat, because he's 50-50. That's how evolution works. And that's a whole nother story. I could talk about that for days. So I got this carb addiction theory now that we're all on a spectrum. I haven't even talked about this yet. This is new. So I'm debuting it here on your channel, Dave. You heard it here first. For whatever it's worth, it's my opinion, my theory at this point. I don't claim to be the first person to ever think along these lines. How could people not think along these lines? To me, it's like it's right up there in front of me. It's obvious. It's smacking me in the face how obvious this is. So that kind of makes me view carnivore in a completely different light. Especially, do we need to be strict carnivore? Because we've taken it too far. We've turned it into a cult almost. I drink a cup of coffee a day. But you're not a real carnivore then, because carnivores don't drink coffee. Blah, blah, blah. And then and here they come. Here they come. Well, you can't be a carnivore for any length of time, because without carbohydrates, your teeth are going to fall out and bad things will happen to your body. So we need to add back in carbohydrates. Now, let me ask you a question. I think that 80 to 90% of us are carbohydrate addicts somewhere on the spectrum. And I don't think I'm being wild, because 80 to 90% of us are metabolically sick. We're metabolically sick because we eat too much sugar. We eat too much sugar because we're carb addicts. Why can't you make that connection? Why isn't anybody making that connection?
I agree. We are carbohydrate addicts.
Yeah. So we're carbohydrate addicts. Admit it to yourself. But some people aren't like alcoholics. Maybe can eat a cookie and close up the box and put it back. Maybe people can eat some potatoes, French fries. Yeah, you can have a potato now and then. Fry it in animal oils and tallow or lard or bacon grease or something. Don't fry it in seed oils. And I guarantee you it's not going to kill you. I can go out there and round up all the 90-year-olds walking around. All of them. And there's a lot of them. And put them in a room and say, okay, everybody in here is a strict carnivore. Raise your hands. What's going to happen? Nobody's going to raise their hands. They eat like their parents and their grandparents ate. They probably eat a somewhat meat-heavy diet, but they eat cake now and then, and they have bread now and then, and they drink alcohol now and then. They still live to be 190 to 100 years old. But we make such a big deal out of this. And I was making a big deal myself about being strict. But it finally dawned on me one day is I do need to be a strict carnivore, because I'm a level 100 carb addict. If I eat one blueberry, bye-bye carnivore. So should everybody who's not a level 100 carb addict, who's a level 30, level 40, have to be as strict as me? Is it really that bad for them? Coffee the same way. You ask me, is coffee good or is coffee bad? I'll send you 2 videos, both equally believable. One of them tells you how coffee is so good for you, it's going to extend your life 10 years. The other one that tells you, don't dare drink it. It's got this poison and that poison. You're going to end up with cancerous warts all over your body. And how are you going to know what to believe? Take any subject. I'll show you 2 sides to the argument. In reality, in common sense, our bodies, our physiology, have the pathways and the mechanisms to handle a certain amount of toxins, certain types of food, but not everybody is the same. So people ask me, what should I eat? I say, how can I tell you? I don't know you. They expect me to say, you have to eat meat. They don't eat any plants. Don't eat any oxalates. Don't eat any seed oil. Don't eat any of this. Well, what about my grandfather? He's 105 years old, and that's all he eats. How do you explain that, Mitch? Well, they don't hurt him like they might hurt you, but here's the deal, until you find out what you can tolerate, what's going to hurt you and what isn't, you can't figure out what the right diet is exactly for you. I can give you broad strokes. I can say, get at least 70% of your food from animal protein. That makes you a carnivore by the scientific description of a carnivore. 70% of his diet from the animals and the other 30 from the other stuff. Learn what foods are bad for you, and no matter what diet you're on or where you fall on this addiction spectrum, just decide that I'm not going to eat those things because we never ate them before. They're manufactured things. Some of them are pretty disgusting, and that's going to be the new direction of my channel. Is going to be talking a lot about it. I went ahead and registered a domain name. I have a website now, OldGuyCarnivore.com. I registered a new domain name. Right now, it points to my Old Guy Carnivore website. So, and that's carbaddictionhelp.com. So if you type in your browser, carbaddictionhelp.com, you go to my old guy site, and there's nothing on there about the carb addiction spectrum yet because I just invented it last week. But I did put a tagline up at the top. Let me see if I got it here. I'll show you real quick. Hang on one second. I go back to this. Yeah, there it is. Well, got half of it anyway. It says, see, they're Old Guy Carnivore. It says carb addiction help management and strategy. Just to say, yeah, I know you typed in carb addiction help, but it says Old Guy Carnivore up top. But you're in the right place. You're in the right place. And I'm going to start fleshing out and developing as best I can. I don't have a team of scientists being funded by some national institute to develop a program with all the, documents and everything else, but just something that's usable, practical for normal people to try to figure out approximately where they fall on this thing and get an idea of what you can experiment with and learn how to recognize the telltale signs of when your subconscious is starting to get a little antsy and throwing cravings at you. And then I've always had this technique, which has been successful for me the first time in my life, and so many people have followed me. And that is the idea that the first 30 days of starting a carnivore diet, I have two rules. First one is throw away the scale. Throw away the scale. Be prepared to gain weight. Losing weight. I understand you came to this diet like 99.9% of everybody else because you want to be prettier, more attractive, and lose weight, but you're sick. Your body isn't working right. You need to so the first 30 days of carnivore diet, if you step on the scale, you most likely will sabotage yourself, disappoint yourself, get disgusted. This isn't working, and you'll never give yourself a chance. So for your own protection, put the scale away. It doesn't matter what you weigh. The second thing is you have one job during that first 30 days. Just one job. Your job is to eat as much as you can. Now, how many people have told you that when you go on a diet? All right, Johnny, we're going to put you on this diet. Just start eating. Eat till you can't eat anymore, and in an instant you get hungry, start eating again. Just keep eating. What kind of diet is this? Trust me. So, but you got to eat meat. Got to eat meat and fat. And, think about the ratio. I don't think about the ratio at all. I don't count any macros. I don't count calories. I don't count anything. I just eat the foods that nature gives me that I know have pretty close to the right ratio already built into them, like an egg. An egg is perfect amount of fat and protein in one package and every other nutrient that we need. It's the most nutritious vitamin pill that a human being can take. We got scared away from eggs because eggs have cholesterol. Of course, eggs have cholesterol. Cholesterol is necessary for life. Without the cholesterol in the egg, there would be no live chicken. The egg would continue to be a pile of yellow goo. Not how long you let it until it started to rot and smell like sulfur. We need cholesterol. So I eat a lot of eggs. I eat 6 eggs every day. Bacon. I don't have to worry about getting enough fat when I eat bacon and eggs. I don't have to count or weigh anything. I know that 6 eggs and a half a pound of bacon is enough for me, and sometimes I only eat that. I never eat a second meal. But if I eat a second meal, it's going to be beef or some kind of meat or chicken thighs. I love chicken thighs. And I have a lot of recipes on my channel about how to cook some of the most delicious things using air fryers and things. But I've developed a way to execute this carnivore lifestyle where you don't feel deprived. And within a month of starting the carnivore diet, with all the food you're eating, 5,000, 6,000, 10,000 calories a day, you expect to have gained 20 pounds, and then you're surprised to find out you actually lost 5 pounds when you finally get back on the scale. It's crazy. It's crazy. It defies all conventional logic, but that's the problem with conventional logic. It's all wrong. That's 2 rules, 2 things. And that hasn't changed, and that won't change. That's how you recover from falling off the wagon. Go back to day 1, throw away the scale, stop feeling sorry for yourself, forgive yourself, because we all do it. Everybody does it, because we recognize and admit I am powerless to fight this addiction. An alcoholic can't begin to recover until he stands in front of the entire meeting and says, "Hi, I'm Mitch, and I'm an alcoholic, and I can't control it." And we have to do the same for carb addiction. We can't say, like everybody says to me who tries carnivore and fails. I say, now here's what's going to happen. You're going to get these thoughts, and the addiction is going to start negotiating with you, and it wins every time. It comes up with lame excuses, and it puts them right into your mind. I'll give you an example. You're standing in front of that piece of chocolate cake. You swore before you went to the birthday party, "I'm strong, I got willpower, I'm not going to eat any cake. No way you're going to tempt me." You're standing there in front of the chocolate cake, and your thoughts start to wander in this direction. You begin to say, you start negotiating with yourself. "Well, just one more time won't hurt. I promise I'll start the diet again tomorrow." Now, if you have never said that to yourself, you're a liar. If you're an addict, you're a liar. You can fool yourself, but don't try to fool me. You are deluding yourself. Admit that it's normal. If it wasn't for the fact that these addictive programmings that we have that control the chemistry of addiction, the hormones and everything, if they weren't present in our ancestors, we would have died off as a species a long, long time ago, because they ensured our survival. So it's logic, it's common sense, it's the obvious. It's the, how did I not see this? It's been out there all along. It's like Isaac Newton, when the apple fell on his head, discovered gravity. As if gravity was a new thing. Gravity been there since the beginning of time. Nobody had actually said, "Hey, that's a thing. Wonder why that happens. How come the apple doesn't go up into the heavens?" People start thinking about it. That's how my mind works. So I think about these things, and this whole scheme of this carb addiction spectrum. Now, remember, Dave, you heard it here first. I'm not going to trademark it or copyright it. Nobody's using it. But I guarantee you, if people start to, follow me on this and start talking about it, it'll be everywhere, just like the term carnivore diet. 8 years ago, Sean Baker wrote a book called The Carnivore Diet. In essence, became the father of the term carnivore diet. He didn't invent the term carnivore. Animals have been carnivores all along. But the carnivore diet. But how many people today know that are new to the carnivore diet, that know Sean Baker came up with the name? Or Nisha Burry came up with the name ketovore? Nobody. These things become adopted. I'd be very flattered if it becomes adopted. I don't want attribution for it. I don't want money for it. I don't want royalties for it. It's my gift, if it works and makes some people really understand what's happening to them. That's, at my age, that'd be my legacy. And hopefully somebody down the road might remember it, but probably not. Probably not. So that's the new deal with me. And I've been harping on carb addiction. If you look back on my channel for years, you'll find videos talking about carb addiction. It's always been my thing, but nobody ever seems to want to jump on the concept. They want to know how to make keto pancakes and keto French fries and keto chocolate cake
And yeah, depending where you are on that spectrum, those things are very, very triggering and just send you back down the carbohydrate spiral, right?
Wow. It doesn't even have to have carbs in it. The taste of it, the mouthfeel of it, all are addictive. And I harp in all my old videos. Don't ever make a low carb version of a food you're addicted to. Pizza, especially. There are so many. Keto pizza crust, carnivore pizza crust. Why would you do that to yourself when you get to a situation where you could care less about pizza? Here's another interesting little thing. Why in the hell would somebody who's finally fixed it, me included, I even find myself doing it. I watch myself. And I try to be very aware of the thoughts that pop into my head. I still, in my hopes and dreams, hold out hope that someday I will figure out a technique where I can moderate blueberry ice cream, which is my kryptonite. It's my most addictive thing in the world. I take frozen blueberries that I buy in a bag. I pour them into an ice cream maker. I put heavy cream in, and I make ice cream out of it. No added nothing. No added sugar, no added anything. All the sweetness comes through. That stuff is like crack for me. Once I eat the first spoonful, I can't stop. And yet, every 3 or 4 months, I go, wow. Maybe now I'm healed enough from this carb addiction where I can figure out a way to moderate, and maybe just once a week have a thing of blueberry. And I get the blueberries, and I find out real quick after the first spoonful that I was trying to fool myself, that my addiction, it was my addiction. It was my subconscious mind whispering in my ear, yeah, I thought I need all that ice cream. And I fall for it every time. Like the routine with Lucy and Charlie Brown and the football, where she holds it in front of him, and every time he goes to kick it, she pulls it out from under him. And she always says, this time I'm not. That's the way the addictions play with us. They tease us. And even after you don't think about this stuff, they sometimes start to yawn and blink their eyes and wipe the sleepy dirt out of it and say, hey, Mitch, remember that blueberry ice cream? And there you go again. And I just got through around to that. I just did the great blueberry ice cream experiment, where I said, I'm going to buy this stuff, keep it in my house for 30 days and not eat it. We'll see what happens. Because I wanted to examine what I was going through. Now, I didn't go into the blueberry experiment with the blueberry experiment in mind. I went into the blueberry experiment because I fell for my subconscious nonsense and ordered the blueberries and the cream, and I had them here. When I got them here, I'm not that far gone. I said, I don't want to eat these. Why did I order them? Well, have you ever found yourself in a situation where you do something and you say to yourself, what was I thinking? What was I thinking? Well, you weren't thinking. Your subconscious was thinking. So that's what happens. I had the blueberry and said, okay, all right, we're gonna make a lemonade out of a lemon. We're gonna take these blueberries, we're gonna do the great experiment. I'm gonna document it, I'm gonna talk about it, I'm gonna try to learn a lesson from it. I lasted 4 days. I actually held out for 4 days. When I find the torture of knowing those things were in my house was so hard to bear that I finally said, all right, getting rid of the blueberries tomorrow. I still haven't told people the final upshot of what really happened, but there's no blueberries around here anymore. And hopefully I won't do that again, but I won't make any promise.
So, Mitch, I'm really happy to hear that you're doing so well. And how can people reach out to you? So, Old Guy Carnivore on YouTube,
Old
and
Guy Carnivore. I don't have a social media presence. Um, Old Guy Carnivore on YouTube. My email address is oldguycarnivore@gmail.com. There's the new domain that I'm going to be building up, and hopefully it'll gain an identity of carbaddictionhelp.com, because I really think that that is a very helpful way of finding out what might be right for you. Because even in the carnivore community, we have so many variations of it. From the lion diet, where you only eat red meat, salt, and water, to regular carnivore, to sloppy carnivore, to ketovore, to keto, to low carb, to high carb, and then Paul Saladino. It's a spectrum.
right, yeah,
It's a spectrum. And not everybody needs to be a carnivore. Not everybody needs to be as extreme. There's no shame. If you don't need to be that extreme, living your life. And maybe if you can enjoy something without falling into the pit of despair and a rabbit hole of excess consumption, there's no reason why you can't do it. There is some credence to the moderation. The problem is addicts can't moderate. So the last thing you can tell an addict is you need moderation. Everything in moderation is okay. Oh, well, that's great for you, but how the hell do I do it? I eat one blueberry and I'm falling into the sugar bowl. Sorry, I have no control. And we have to recognize that that's a real thing. And sometimes understanding why we're like that and other people aren't, understanding what created the mechanisms that drive these cravings and addictions, is the key to accepting them as real and accepting the fact that there's nothing wrong with us. We're just programmed differently than the other guy. So if everything else I try to do on my channel is, because of my age, the length of time I've been on this planet doing this kind of thinking, the ability that I have to figure things out, I always have had, the ability that I have to put my thoughts into words spontaneously, because we didn't script any of this little thing, did we? I don't know where it comes from, Dave. If you ask me, well, repeat what you just said for the last 15 minutes, I go, what are you, crazy? I don't remember what I said the last 15 minutes. It just comes out. The thoughts create the words as I go. I tend to talk too much. People tend to not listen to me. That makes me crazy, because then they say, I don't understand. I say, well, if you quit talking and start listening, you might, that's another story. So
yeah,
it's always good to see you. Always good to
yeah.
see you.
So I'll link to your channel and your email and the new site and the new domain in the show notes. Thank you so much for coming on and letting us know how things are going, Mitch. I really appreciate your time.
It's been my pleasure, and I don't do this more than once or twice a year, and there are very few that I'll come on with like this. So that shows you how much I admire, Dave, the work that you do, and your position in our community, and the respect that you get. You're nowhere near as controversial as me. but that's okay. That's okay. But you have my respect and my thanks too. Thank you. Thank you for what you do.